Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United breaking news as the Glazers choose Sir Jim Ratcliffe as their preferred bidder, according to breaking news that came in late last night. There's two big things I would say about this, whether it's true or not. So Sir Jim Ratcliffe has apparently been chosen by the Glazers as their preferred bidder. I mean, obviously, the two things that I would say straight away is, one, this is not guaranteed to be true. It could well be true. They're saying it's coming from insiders. We'll go into that in a minute. So it could well be true. And it's not the first time we've heard this in the last couple of weeks that the Glazers are going to go down this route. So, of course, it could be true. Let's not dismiss it as, opinion that it's not true when it could be true. And we'll talk about what the ramifications of that would be, because if it happens, we've lost those people who don't want this to happen. And the second point is, what we don't want to happen is, and I refute this wholeheartely, is that this fan base has not been championing Qatar. This is not what it's championing. It's not championing sports washing or, abuses against human rights or anything else negative that the press and other people want to portray Qatar as. That is not what this fan base has been after for the last 17 years. Because Al Thani and Qatar only came out in the last 7 months. This fan base wants, as a majority, the Glazers out of our football club. This rhetoric of story that it's Sir Jim against Al Thani and Sir Jim might not be as bad as people think. Maybe that will be the case. I don't know. But what Sir Jim represents is the Glazers staying. So whether you're disappointed about Sir Jim getting the club and Al Thani not getting the club, it was never about getting Al Thani into the club. It was about removing the Glazers from the club. It was about a full sale. So wherever you sit on this morning, and whether this is true or not, the fans have lost. And it'll be very interesting to see what the reaction is to it if Sir Jim does get hold of the club. Because I personally have seen no evidence that this is good for Manchester United in the long run, because the Glazers will still be there. And I am not going to sit there and be okay with some fake promise that in 3 years' time we might remove Joel and Avram by paying them a shitload more money than you'd pay them now. How does that work? Where does that money come from? I don't like this deal. I think it stinks, and it's nothing to do with Sir Jim. I think it stinks to high heaven because you're keeping the Glazers and you're doing a deal with the Glazers. And I can't move away from what I and many people said a month ago when we were talking about the Elliott Group. Anybody who does a deal with the Glazers and keeps them in there is an enemy of the club. And I'm not going to move away from that. That's for Sir Jim to prove. It's not for me to prove. It's not for you to prove. That's for Sir Jim to prove. I will call him out as an enemy of this football club for doing a deal with the Glazers. And the reason I will do it is not for some sensationalist rant, because I've seen for the last 18 years what the Glazers have done to this football club. Old Trafford is visibly rotting because of them. The team has gone from the best team in England, consistently winning things with a brilliant squad and a brilliant ground, to a team that's basically Spurs' rival. The club's on its knees because of these people, and you're going to do a deal with them. I don't agree with that. When there's an option for somebody to come in and buy it in its entirety, I don't agree with that. But what I will say is, we have got, what choice have we got? What if this is the case? What choice have we got? We just have to do what we've done. And people will say, well, if you don't like it, don't support the club. Many people didn't like the Glazers. They still support the club. I'm not going to turn my back on the club because I support the club for a very different reason to the Glazers or Sir Jim Ratcliffe. I support the club because it's the club that was handed to me from my granddad. Because he was, he grew up absolutely worshipping Duncan Edwards. So there's a story as to why I support this club, and it won't be taken away from me by greedy people who I don't think are good enough for this football club. I'll just have to hope, like I have done for the last 17 years, that we can still be successful. But to be honest with you, if Sir Jim Ratcliffe does a deal with the Glazers, I think if I'm a Man City fan, I'm an Arsenal fan, I'm a Newcastle fan, I'm a Liverpool fan, I'm a Chelsea fan, I'm rubbing my hands together and saying they're never competing. They're never competing with that business model. So we'll have to wait and see. What do you think of this combo? We don't get top four. Liverpool does, City win the treble and Glazers stay on. I don't know what we're talking about that for. Hi, Mark. If the choice is less Glazer influence or existing Glazer influence, surely less is better. I'm not talking about this. That's like saying Do you want someone to shit on your head for, you know, for 5 minutes, or do you want them to do it for a minute? Like, it's still being shit on. I don't get how. Look, everybody's different, of course, but some people justify things by going, well, it's shit, but it's not as shit as it is before. When there's an option of something that's completely what we want, we'll have to put up with this. If this is what's going to happen, we'll have to put up with it. Of course we will. Nobody's denying that. We're powerless. And we will be victim of spin. You know, we're going to buy this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. We will be spun around by PR like we have done. But the thing is, like, I know what's going to happen if Sir Jim gets hold of the club. We're going to be spun around. There'll be so much positivity of what's going to happen, what's going to happen, what's going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. I would say to those fans who fall for it, where have you been for the last 10 years? We've been spun for the last 10 years. We've won nothing. We've done nothing significant, but we've been told for 10 years we're going to do this. There's nothing we can't do. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We don't do it. I look at the way that club would be structured with the Glazers staying, and that's the thing for me. I don't care what Sir Jim Radcliffe's plan is. I really do not care what you're going to do, because there's two people still in this football club that shouldn't be here, and they own 20% of it. And I don't believe that they're staying on to take an extra 100 million in a couple of years' time. I really don't. The Sun reported it was Qatar the other day before it was Sir Jim Radcliffe's silver. And Mark, there are PSG ultras protesting the circus they've created in Paris. They understand that despite the league titles, they've lost the club's soul, says Live. Well, look, let's go to where we are with this, because ultimately there's a very good point that I said at the start, and that is that this may not actually turn out to be true. So let's have a look at this. So this came out last night, and it is coming from the Sun, that the Glazers are finally ready to sell Manchester United with Sir Jim Radcliffe, the preferred bidder. This is coming from Dan King and Martin Lipton from the Sun. Now, Martin Lipton, for years ago, used to be on the Sunday Supplement on Sky Sports. You know, he's a well-known football journalist. Have the Sun got the scoop on this story? I very much doubt it. But to be fair, about 11 days ago, there were stories coming out, I think from Mike Keegan and a couple of other people, about this anyway. So would this be an exclusive, or would this just be a confirmation of something people were talking about 11 days ago? You've got to consider that. It could be nonsense. It could be absolutely nail on the head. So, look, I don't know. The next bit is Old Trafford insiders have indicated the Glazers would prefer to sell majority control to Radcliffe's Ineos Sport rather than giving the whole club to Sheikh Jassim. This obviously would be because this allows Joel and Avram to stay. They never wanted to leave the club. So what would happen is Sir Jim would buy the look, we know this. Sir Jim would buy out the other Glazer siblings, of which I think there are 4. He would own just over 50%. And then Joel and Avram would have about 20% between them, and the remaining 30% would be on the New York Stock Exchange. We can dive into this if you want, but ultimately it always comes down to the fact that I don't give a toss what Sir Jim is offering. I've defended Sir Jim. I've heard people call him a Chelsea fan because he had a Chelsea season ticket and he tried to buy Chelsea. I've defended Sir Jim on that. I actually do think he's a Man United fan. I do think he's Manchester born and bred, and I do think he is a Manchester United fan, and I do think he'd rather buy Man United than Chelsea. So I've stuck up for him for that. It's not that I like Sir Jim Radcliffe, and last August I quite liked the idea of him over anybody. What I don't like is I think we've been played as a fan base. I think he's played his part in it. I think we've been led down the garden path over the last 6 months that Man United's up for sale. And I personally think the Glazers have been working with Sir Jim and American investors for the last 8 months on this very deal. I don't think it's coincidental that Ineos is being bankrolled by an American investment bank to borrow the money to buy Man United. And the American investment bank was involved in the Super League with the Glazers. I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think there's something in it. And I think United have been working on this for a long time. I think the Glazer siblings want out because they've got no interest. I think Joel and Avram never wanted out, but they were concerned how they could stay. And in Sir Jim, they found a donor they can work with and stay and use him as the front guy like they use Solskjaer, but stay in the background with power, stay on the board, keep earning money, and I think that's their plan. And I will keep saying this until we find anything else out that's actually concrete, because I don't understand how, as Joel and Avram, you wouldn't take £700 million right now from Al Thani like your siblings. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you take 700 million now? Because you think you can make more in the future. In 3 years, we're not going to make enough money that we can give them 1.5 billion. We can't double that 700 million each in 3 years. So they're here for a long time. And where are we going to find this money? The reality is we are imposing debt on the club from day one with Jim Radcliffe that people don't even understand. Yes, he's going to borrow money through Ineos that won't come to the club. He's borrowing money through Ineos to buy the club. Businesses do that. I'm not bothered about that. The debt that's already on the club will stay. That's not going to be, the £500 million or billion, whatever you want to call it, that will stay anyway. But there's a hidden debt that's there, and that's the 20% that the Glazers own and the 30% that's on the New York Stock Exchange. You've got to get rid of those people. You only own half the club. How much is it going to cost you to get rid of those people over the next 5-10 years? Probably 3-4 billion. Where's that money going to come from? Your own pocket. So Jim Radcliffe's plan is flawed. As a business plan, it is riddled with debt. And even if he was going to get rid of Joel and Avram in 3 years' time, that's debt. That's like a debt. It's still 20% that you've got to pay for in 3 years. I mean, people don't understand this. They're like, yeah, but Sir Jim's plan is to buy 50% now and then he's going to buy 20% in 3 years' time. It's like a mortgage. Well, where's the money coming from, the 20% in 3 years' time? And you can't afford to buy the full club now. As I say, Man City are rubbing their hands. They're like, this is great. This is great. They might be marginally better than they were under the Glazers, but they don't they've got no money. They've got no money. They cannot compete. They will never be able to compete. They've got to build a stadium. They've got to build a squad, infrastructure. Joel and Avram are still there. They're still a cash cow. They're still in debt. They ain't competing. So I prefer Qatar simply because the Glazers are gone. I generally don't like state ownership, but it's the only non-Glazer option. If it was simply Sir Jim versus Qatar, I'd want Sir Jim, but that's not the case. I agree, Joshua. If Sir Jim was going for a full sale, like we were told he was going to, then, I think there's a decision to be made there, isn't there? If this is true, then we can forget about United challenging for any trophy, says Lee. I completely agree with that. And I don't see any benefits having Sir Jim still in debt, Glazer's still here, how he even meant to afford a new stadium and new training facility, says Sirvan. Look, we will look, if Sir Jim Radcliffe comes in, we're going to have to get on with it. We're going to have to get on with it. I was thinking about this morning before I went live, and I was like, if Sir Jim Radcliffe gets hold of the club and he works with the Glazers, all I can say is I'm completely against it. He's done a deal that makes me want to throw up. I don't care whether it... if it was Al Thani, I'd say the same thing. Anybody who did a deal to keep the Glazers here is an enemy of this football club. I don't care what the future is. You are. You can rewrite the future. The future's there to be written, but right here, right now, you're an enemy of the football club if you do a deal with the Glazers. It's sickening. Absolutely sickening. And I think it will damage us in the future. I would love to come back and look at this video in 5 years' time and we've won the title and we've won the Champions League under Sir Jim, and I go, you know what, I was very wrong, but I don't think I will be, because I've been watching football all my life and I know what the Premier League is now. And ultimately, I also fear that if we turn Qatar down to keep Sir Jim with the Glazers, he'll go and buy Spurs and we will fall further down. I actually think Chelsea are unobtainable with their ownership. Man City are unobtainable, and Newcastle are unobtainable. We're probably on a level playing field potentially with Liverpool and Arsenal, but we're not run as well as they are. So we could compete with Liverpool and Arsenal if we got the right infrastructure in place. But it only takes another super wealthy club and the Champions League spots are gone. So I worry. It's about what happens on the pitch. I struggle to believe that Lipton and the Sun gets the scoop over credible business journalists on the big business deal of the century, says Tyrant. And I think that's something to hang on to. At this point, we are hoping we go bankrupt so we can restart. We are going to be stuck in this toxic relationship for years to come. I'm in tears. I'm legit in tears. Well, Lee, look, as I said, and as has just been said before, this is coming from the Sun. It doesn't mean it's true. But they feel that the way they're reporting it, they're acting like they've got some inside scoop. So we've got to react to it. It's a news show. I think there is a word of warning. It could not be true, but ultimately, it's not dissimilar to what Mike Keegan said 11 days ago and a few other people in Sky said 11 days ago. I hold out hope that there is still hope because, I don't like this idea, but it might be something we have to deal with. And I think as intelligent people as you are, and I believe as a fan base, You've got to start thinking, what if this happens? What are you going to do? Because I've seen a lot of people, protests and not non-protest people, who've said full sale. I only want a full sale. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do if we end up with Sir Jim and the Glazers? Are you just going to go, oh, well, Sir Jim's a nice guy, I'm going to forget what I've been saying for the last 17 years? Or are you going to continue with it? That's going to be really interesting, because Sir Jim and the Glazers are going to come up with some sort of spin that this is not what it's like in the past, this is going to be really different. How can it be different when Joel and Avram are still there, and they're the two people that have destroyed this football club over the last decade especially? How can we believe that this is going to be different when two people are very powerful still in the football club? I mean, I can't move past that. That's my biggest issue with Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid. I can't move past the fact that you can say everything you like, but you only own just over half the club. And Jim and Joel and Avram, who've destroyed this club over the last 10 years, are still very much part of it with a lot of power. I don't know how you move past that. I really don't know how you move past that. It's... I'm not saying that Sir Jim wouldn't be a bad owner, but this is like Manchester United being offered Vinicius Jr. and signing Harvey Barnes. That's, in a footballing sense, that's how I feel about it in relation to our chances of being successful. I'm not saying that Sir Jim would be terrible. I think there might be some positives, but I think a full sale is like buying Vinicius Jr. I think this thing is like buying Harvey Barnes. I think there's a world of difference between the two bids. What if Sir Jim made this bid because it's the only deal he can make that values the club higher than Qatar? Doesn't make him evil since they have a minority, says David. It makes him selfish. It makes him an enemy of the football club, because he's doing something selfishly to get hold of the club in the only way he can. I don't think he's got the best interests of the football club at heart. I think he's got his own best interests at heart. I understand why he's doing it. He's doing the deal he can afford to do, and he has to do a deal with the Glazers. That's not what's best for Manchester United. That's what's best for Sir Jim. Anybody who kept the Glazers in power, I don't care whether you're Sir Jim, Gary Barlow, Althani, Gary Neville, it doesn't make any difference to me who you are and how nice you are. If you're doing a deal with the Glazers, we can't say on one hand the Elliott Group are scum, we don't want them to invest and keep the Glazers there, and on the other hand, oh, Sir Jim's doing that, it's fine. You've got to be even-handed, haven't you? Austin, thank you very much for gifting 5 memberships. What is Sir Jim's motive to even buy the club? Buying only half the club on debt, using debt to build infrastructure and squad. Sir Jim's plan, Scotty, as far as I know, is that he thinks that he can run Manchester United morally and make it successful. I don't think Sir Jim will ever get rid of the remaining Glazers or the other 30% because he already overvalued the club's price to get his 50%. I don't, Lenny. I think you've made the comment of the year. I don't think Sir Jim Ratcliffe can get rid of the Glazers or the other 30%. He hasn't got the money to do it, and he's overvalued the club. You make a great point. He's buying half of the club for $3 billion. There's still 20% owned by Joel and Avram, and there's another 30% owned by the New York Stock Exchange. He's valued the club at $6 billion the day he's bought it. So he's got to find another $3 billion to get rid of the Joel and Avram and the other New York Stock Exchange. And that's today. Joel and Avram want more than that. Otherwise, they'd sell today to Althani. So this is what I mean. He's imposing debt on the club in a different way. By buying half of it for $3 billion, you've instantly valued the other half at $3 billion. And everyone else will want more than that in the future. So where's this $4 billion coming from to get hold of all of the club? I don't think he'll ever own the whole club. I think it's a great point. Ratcliffe buying the club will be worst thing to happen since Piers Morgan got his own TV show, says Cush. Are the Glazers able to buy the remaining 30% on the stock market if the Sir Jim deal goes through, says Ash. Well, there's all sorts of questions, isn't there? Look, I know a few people, good people, people I respect, who want Sir Jim to own it. They've wanted Sir Jim for ages and they've not changed their mind. But I've said to them, look, I get, everybody has a preference. I get that, but I don't know how you can be happy about it. It's full of holes. Like, there's loads that can go wrong with it. A wise man once called out the club's heritage out in a fantastic press conference. Most people were glad he was gone, but things haven't improved much since, says Yannick. I can see Sir Jim doing a Mike Ashley. The consideration is being paid only for brand and goodwill. The team is not good enough and requires investment, says TG. God save our club if Jim buys it, says Dejan. And if this is true, then Sir Jim will leverage the new stadium once it's built to pay off Joel and Avram. Either way, it's more debt, says Anthony. I'm worried. But you know what? I want to be completely fair here. If Sir Jim Radcliffe gets hold of this football club, I believe and hope most of you will still support this football club, because I will. That's not going to change. I think we've had 10 years of the worst ownership we've ever had in my life. It's been horrific. And, you know, I still support the club. I'll still support the club. And that's what they're banking on anyway. But I'm terrified of what that future will be. I want Manchester United to compete for the Champions League. I want Manchester United to compete for the Premier League. I've looked at the Premier League over the last few years. I've said it many times on this channel. Regardless of who owns Manchester United, the minute Newcastle got bought by Saudi Arabia, I knew they would be competing for the Premier League and the Champions League in the next 5 years. I knew it. And Newcastle were a relegation club at that time. I knew, as a relegation club with that ownership model, they were going to compete for the big trophies in the next 5 years. This is so simplistic. There is no magic formula. There is no hope. It's very simple in the world of football. Real Madrid are a huge club, but they also spend huge money to bring in the best players. Barcelona try to do it. It can go wrong if you've got the wrong people spending the wrong amount of money, but they try to do it. Manchester City do it. Newcastle are going to do it. PSG have done it. Bayern Munich do it in Germany. There's a running theme here. PSG are dominant in France, Bayern Munich are dominant in Germany, Real Madrid and Barcelona are dominant in Italy, and Manchester City are now dominant in England. There is a running theme. They are all super wealthy, well-run clubs with a clear infrastructure at the top around the board. What we would potentially be doing here with Sir Jim is we'd have him with 50%, the New York Stock Exchange with 30%, and Joel and Avram with 20%. Three different sets of owners, two of which are focused on their own pockets. The New York Stock Exchange are not Man United fans. They're there to make money. Joel and Avram are there to make money. So half the club already is owned by people who want to make money. And then you've got Sir Jim, who's basically bankrupt, not bankrupted him, but, up to his eyeballs in debt just to get half of the club. I don't think it's a recipe. You look at that. 50% of the club is owned by people who just want to make money out of it. And then Sir Jim, we don't know what his motives are, up against Abu Dhabi, who just have Man City as a play toy to win, Saudi Arabia, who have Newcastle as a play toy to win. And then, obviously, if you want to talk about Champions League, there's a few others in there. It's a recipe for disaster. But some people like it because, well, at least we'll be in the hands of a Man United fan. Well, half of the club will be in the hands of a Man United fan who did just try to buy Chelsea last year, and half of it will be in the hands of the same people it's been in for the last decade. It terrifies me. I hope it works, but it terrifies me, and I'm not going to pretend and blow smoke up people's arse that I think this is going to be a really exciting future for Manchester United. I think it's a terrifying future because ultimately we know what makes you successful. You don't have to like it. A lot of people don't like the ownership of Man City. A lot of people don't like the ownership of Newcastle. A lot of people don't like the ownership of PSG. Are they successful? Yes. Are they the biggest threats in world football? Yes. If the Glazers stay in any capacity, I'll retire as a supporter of Man United, says DK. When I read the news from The Sun, I felt depressed. I wonder what success is to Sir Jim. Is it turning a profit at the end of the season or winning titles? I think it's the former, says Mark. The only way this gets worse is if the Qataris now go and buy Liverpool, says Ruff. Look, I tell you what, I know it's a bit sadistic, but if Sir Jim gets hold of Manchester United with the Glazers, part of me hopes they go and buy Qatar. Part of me hopes Qatar go and buy Spurs. Because I would hate them to get hold of Liverpool because of the rivalry, but part of me wants them to go and buy Spurs because they've already got the stadium. All you've got to do is buy the players and they will become as big as Man City. They'll become as big as Newcastle are going to be. And I would just sit there and go, what the fuck is going on at this football club? Because top four is gone. We are never going to get top four when you're competing against 3 and Chelsea 4 super wealthy clubs. But there was a great question there. What is success for Sir Jim? I don't know, because he's not put it out there. He wants to put the Manchester back into Manchester United. I go to Manchester quite regularly. I'm sure a lot of you do. I don't know what that means. Manchester's still there. It's a fantastic city. It's growing. It's vibrant. I don't know what putting the Manchester back into Manchester United means. Are we just going to stop foreign fans coming now? I don't. What is that buzzword? What does that actually mean? I don't know what that means. So I don't know what the plan is with Sir Jim. And I said this about Chelsea when they got Pochettino. If you want top four every year, Pochettino's a really good appointment for you. But I've seen Chelsea win the Champions League and the title more frequently than Man United have in the last 10 years. I would expect they would want more. What if Sir Jim's plan for Man United is just, well, as long as we can get Champions League football every year, that's great, and maybe the odd title race? That's very different to what Al Thani would want, which is to win the title every year. I don't think you can win the title every year anymore, but I certainly don't think you can with some sustainability, let's do it the proper way model. And he can't do it the proper way anyway, because there's too much debt. So Jim last summer plus Glazers are brilliant people, but they will not sell. Mark last fall, they probably have a buyer ready, but we'll check the open market if they can get more. Well, I did say it. I don't like to say. Thank you very much for reminding me of that, football man. I did say it back in November. I mean, I don't like to go back on old videos and clip them back, but I did say it in November. I felt that I 100% felt that the Glazers had somebody lined up and they were just testing the water with the open market. Lo and behold, I actually thought it was American investment. In a way, it sort of is. I was right. I did say in November that I felt that there was an American investment fund already in place to invest with the Glazers. Well, in a way, I was right. Because although Ineos is not American, they are borrowing the money from America. People are not asking what ongoing control strings Sir Jim lenders are putting on him. They're not giving him billions as a charity, says Michael. I wouldn't be surprised if the Super League's behind all this. I mean, I can't remember right off the top of my head which American institution it was. It might have been Morgan Stanley, I can't remember. But they were going to bankroll the Super League. I have a feeling it might be them who is bankrolling Ineos to buy the club. 2 + 2 is Matic, it's also 4. I wouldn't be surprised if this is all about the Super League. Because the Glazers know if they get Man United in the Super League, the value of the club goes up. We should be competing at the very top. Jim's vanity project will turn us into Spurs. For my mental health, I might take a break supporting United, says Shane. It's getting into my head now and it's over if this goes through. I hope I'm wrong, but it's not looking like it. Very disappointing, says Struddy. 35 years of Man United to pan. If Glazers stay away with the Jim, that's it for me. Stopping supporting football full stop, says Robert. So Jim and the Glazers would be like running a marathon dressed as a rhino. We're running the same race, but at a serious disadvantage, says Grant. Well, the mind starts popping with ideas, doesn't it? I mean, look, let me just add this in. If you wanted a bit of a spin, I mean, yeah, this is great. The Glazers are going to stay, but at least we're going to get rid of, Richard Arnold. I mean, what does that mean? This would mean an imminent exodus of the rest of the Old Trafford top brass, including Chief Executive Richard Arnold, but not the two Glazer siblings. I'd rather keep Richard Arnold than the Glazer siblings. At least, I mean, I don't think Richard Arnold's great at his job. I think he walked into the job mates rates just like Murta, but I'd rather keep Murta and Arnold than the Glazers. I mean, I'd get rid of all of them, but I'd rather keep Murta and Arnold because they're not, they're paid to do a job. They're employees. The Glazers have just owned the club and run it badly. But I think that we're just going to have to see what comes next. That's all we can do. But I can't spin a positive on this. I really, we're going to have to at some point if it happens, and there is still that chance that it won't happen. But I feel that if it does happen, Thomas says these conspiracies are embarrassing. Real fans do not want a state-owned project that has no soul. Thomas, there's no such thing as real fans, and so you're telling me that the people who were protesting and staying out the ground for 18 minutes, they're not real fans. But you are, Thomas. Yeah, I think you're a troll. The funny thing here is that all the protest groups, everybody who was protesting, everybody online, they have one line: full sale. He doesn't represent a full sale. So I don't know who your real fans are, because the fans that are protesting, or that all their signs say Glazers out, full sale. So Jim doesn't represent that. So I think if this happens, if this is true, if the Glazers are going to pick Sir Jim and he's going to have 50% and they're going to have 20%, that doesn't represent a full sale. It doesn't represent Glazers out. And I think, as sickening as it would be, well, you tell me what happens next. I don't know what happens next. Imagine this is true. Imagine this is true. Imagine that is true. The Glazers are finally ready to sell with Sir Jim Ratcliffe the preferred bidder. So they're going to sell half of the club to Sir Jim and then they're going to stay with their 20%. What happens to all the protests then? What happens to all of you then? Do you just sit down and go, we've lost? Do you give Sir Jim a chance and go, it's fine, you're working with Joel and Avram, they've ruined the club for the last 10 years, but we'll give you a chance? Do the protests ramp up? Do they disappear? I don't know. I don't know what happens. I only speak for myself. From my own point of view, I will. I think we're finished as a top level club. I think we're finished under that model. And I will sit and watch it and hope we're not. But when we're not competing, I'll just say, well, we all wanted a full sale. We all wanted the Glazers out. This is the scenario that we knew would happen. I think it's going to be a very bumpy ride, but I don't necessarily think that the protests will continue. I don't know. I mean, ultimately, if you want a full sale and you want the Glazers out, you haven't achieved it. So surely you have to continue with that. But what I would imagine would happen is, as soon as Sir Jim gets hold of the club, it's Operation Spin. They'll come up with some position on, some toothless position on the board for maybe the Supporters Trust, maybe one of the protest groups, free pints for everybody. I don't know. We'll buy Harry Kane. The Glazers bought Casemiro and Anthony for 150 million in the last 2 weeks of a shit transfer window last summer. If the Glazers can find 150 million quid to buy two players after a shit summer transfer window to appease the fans, who knows what Sir Jim can do? Who knows what money we can borrow and, bankrupt, I don't know. But short term, I think it would be Operation Spin. Long term, I can't see how we win. I can't see how we compete long term. We haven't got the revenue streams. We haven't got the infrastructure. We haven't got the ownership model. We haven't got the wealth. I don't see how long term. I think they can whack a few plasters on the wounds. We're brilliant at that, but I don't think we can perform the major surgery under that model. I really don't. And what I do think is, and I disagree with you, Thomas, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory, and I'll come back to it now. Radcliffe bite, I've done that one. I wonder what success I've done that one. Radcliffe and the Glazers waiting for the Super League. Carter, you've just timed it well. We're almost in the same groove here. I think this is all about the Super League. 100%. I think this is about the Super League. There is absolutely no way the Glazers are going to Joel and Avram Glazer, there's no way they're going to watch their siblings walk off with 700 million each and stay with 20% to leave in 3 years' time with 700 million. There's no point. They are staying because they want something to happen. They want their share to double in value. They want that 700 million to be worth 1.5 billion each. They want 10% of United to be worth $1 billion. That's what they want. They don't want 700 million, they want $1 billion. And actually, they want to stay. They want to stay for a long time. So I think what they're looking at doing here is they've got a plan in mind to stay. And they've got a plan in mind to massively improve their value of their stake. There's only one way of doing that. And that's the Super League. As soon as the Super League happens and Man United are playing Real Madrid in New York and AC Milan in Sydney and Liverpool in Delhi, that 700 million for 10% is suddenly worth 1.5 billion, because Man United go from a 6 billion club to a 10 billion club overnight. The Super League is super wealth. It destroys football as we know it. It franchises football. But I don't think the Super League's dead. I don't. I think people like Perez at Real Madrid and everybody else, everybody knows the Super League's not dead. Fans think they killed it. We didn't kill it. We just delayed it. And what they did is they were too arrogant. They thought they could just bring it in. They thought they could sweep the fans away and bring it in. They thought they were powerful enough to do it. And they underestimated it and they planned it badly. What they're doing now is they're putting the work in to make sure that they won't get defeated next time. And when that happens, Man United are one of the biggest brand clubs in the world, will be straight into the Super League. I think Sir Jim and the Glazers, this is the plan. This is the plan. Get us into the Super League, we'll pay you off, and I'll get all of the club. I might be wrong. Wake up, Mark, says CJ. If United spent their funds as smart as City, they could compete. How can United not compete because of funds, but Arsenal and Liverpool can, says CJ. Last time I checked, CJ, Man City are winning the league, not Liverpool and Arsenal. So they're not competing. Arsenal and Liverpool are not competing with Man City. Competing isn't pushing a title race until May. Competing's winning it. At least with the Rat, he wants a new director of football. No more circus of Murta in the transfer window, says Jordan. Well, Murta won't be there no matter who's in charge. It almost feels cruel that Qatar was involved in the bidding process in the first place. If I hadn't seen such riches, I could live with being poor, says Blue Tick Mafia. I feel for my son. I saw Duncan Edwards, the Champions League and Premier League titles. He sees the clubs becoming the Harlem Globetrotters, says Christopher. Thank you very much for your super chat there. And Barrel Shark says the Parasites Glazers left Old Trafford fall apart with this. So Jim Deal, it feels like they're burning it down. And the government threatened legislation to stop the Super League and assurances other teams gave not to join in the future. I genuinely don't see how United could join with no other English teams joining too, says Andrew Lineker. Do you trust the British government? I feel like Gary Neville now. Do you trust the British government? I don't. I think that's the biggest load of shit ever. I don't. Robert says you need City, PSG, and Chelsea for a Super League. Whoever owns it. I agree, Robert, and I think that will happen. And I don't have any doubt that will happen. The Super League, I think, is going to be very, very hard to stop. And I don't think the British government will have the teeth to stop Manchester United or any other English club going into a Super League, if I'm being completely honest. Somebody said Samuel Luckhurst has tweeted, yeah, they're interested in Anderlecht goalkeeper Bart Verbruggen, who is one of many goalkeepers that we've looked at, but we're not talking about that at the moment. We can come back to all that sort of stuff later. We're talking about something far bigger here around Manchester United at the moment. Laurie Whitwell says it would be hard for Richard Arnold to keep his job. I mean, look, if Sir Jim Radcliffe staying at Manchester United with the Glazers can be palatable to you just because Richard Arnold's going to lose his job, that's up to you. I mean, that doesn't make any difference to me at all. You know, I think that changes with Al Thani anyway. Look, if Al Thani gets hold of Manchester United, what did Abu Dhabi do? They changed the bloody manager. Now, I don't think we changed the manager, but they're going to bring in the best of the best. You know, maybe that story yesterday about Al Thani wanting ex-players was a little plant before this, so that people would go, well, I don't want Al Thani anyway because I don't want Rio Ferdinand as director of football or Gary Neville as the CEO. But I don't want that either. But it's far more palatable than the Glazers. As I say, I said it at the start of the video and I have to say it again. I cannot move past the fact that anybody, it's not even about Sir Jim. You know, I never wanted it to be about Sir Jim versus Al Thani. It's not about that. And I would love to know, I'd love to take every single voice of the 15,000 people watching or the 100,000 people that will watch this video. I would love to take that and, you know, just get everybody's surveyed opinion on what their problem is with Sir Jim and the Glazers having hold of the club. I'd love to know what your stance is. I can't do that. It'd take me bloody weeks. But what I will say, and some of you might agree with me and some of you might not. It doesn't really matter to me whether it's Sir Jim, whether it's Althani, whether it's Ziliakis, Michael Knighton, some Bitcoin fan scheme where everyone puts a pound in. I would absolutely, categorically, 100%, Shane Hughes, welcome to the Members Club, say this, and that's why I said it at the start of the video. Anybody, Elliott Group, Carlisle Group, Sir Jim, Althani, anybody who does a deal to get hold of a bit of Man United but keeps the Glazers is an enemy of the football club, in my opinion. There is no but. There's no Nicky but in this. It's completely and utterly set in stone, in my opinion, that if you do any deal to get hold of the club but keep the Glazers in, you are an enemy of this fan base. And that, look, I might be in the minority, I might be in the majority, I might be being unfair, I might be being fair, but that's my opinion. Anybody who buys this football club and keeps Joel and Avram in it is an enemy of this football club. And people can say, but I'm going to tell you why, because people can make statements and they don't back it up. The reason I have that stance, and it can't be changed, is that for the last 10 years, and I know the Glazers have owned the club a lot longer, but it's been Joel and Avram running the football club for the last decade. For the last 10 years, we've gone from title winners to nowhere near a title. I know we finished second a couple of times, but nowhere near a title. Hardly ever qualifying for the Champions League, let alone challenge for it. Carabao Cup's the only trophy we've won in the last 6 years. The debt's increased, the stadium's falling apart. The club has spent money but may as well have thrown it on a bonfire. I don't think you could run that club any worse over the last 10 years if you went back to 2013 and said to somebody, please run this club as bad as you can for the next 10 years. I don't think you could be in a worse position than we are now. So anybody that does a deal to keep them at the club, I'm sorry, that exposes you as desperate. That exposes you as selfish, because basically you can't afford to buy all of it, and you're so self-obsessed with getting hold of our football club that you'll do a deal with the people that have been destroying it for 10 years. That's self-motivated. That's nothing to do with what's best for the football club or best for the fans. That's about what's best for you. That's about up yours, everybody else. I know best. I know if I can get half of this club, I can turn it into something special. But you're doing it with the people who've destroyed it, who you describe as good people. There's a quote of you saying they're good people. This is a selfish, motivated vanity project. It's not what's best for Manchester United. It's what's best for the person who does the deal with the Glazers, because they want Man United and they think they know what they're doing. You're up against, mate. You're up against, and you've got to look at the age profile of Sir Jim here, because you're up against a juggernaut in Manchester called Manchester City. They've not got 20% owned by the Glazers. They've got a fantastic stadium. They've got fantastic infrastructure. They've got the best manager in the world. They've got the best squad in the world. They are a well-oiled, pardon the pun, machine that ain't going to stop. You're coming in with debt here, debt there, IOU there, IO there. I've got to build a stadium. You think you're competing against that on your vanity project? I just cannot see it. There's no part of me that thinks this could work. And I really hope I'm going to be wrong. I hope there's some sort of master plan. But the only master plan is Man City's, because Noel Gallagher wrote it. It's not Manchester United. We haven't got a master plan. There is no master plan. I can't see it. I cannot see how this is going to work. All I see is a shitload of debt and confusion on the red side, and this juggernaut machine that works smoothly on the blue side. And if you're asking me to bet who's going to win the most titles in the next 20 years, well, it's like looking into the sea. It's all blue. I can't see how we're going to work this. Hi Mark, what's your prediction on where Man United will finish next season in the Super League? Lee, you're an arse. Rid, welcome to the Members Club. I think it was Althani doing this, and Sir Jim Radcliffe full sale, it'd be the same. Most fans would still choose Althani as they want Mbappe. No, I disagree, Robert. I can't speak for people, Robert, but I disagree. If Sir Jim was offering up full sale and Althani was doing a deal with the Glazers, I would want Sir Jim. I know my heart. I know my morals. I know. And I think a lot of United fans would be the same. Because if Sir Jim could afford to buy all of the club, why would you want Al Thani, who's only going to buy half of it and work with the Glazers? I don't want that. It's not about super wealth. Super wealth is the way, but it's not about that. It's about removing the Glazers and having a full sale. That's what the fans want. More debt and being less competitive will surely reduce the value of the club and reduce the fan base, says Wookie. Well, I'd hope it doesn't reduce the fan base. That's football to get bigger. United fans won't back the Super League. Jim has been a snake, says James Dockery. Well, there we go. We'll see what happens. As I say, I think it's well worth discussing this because it could be true. I would read where it's coming from, the Sun, which I wouldn't expect to get an exclusive. My only concern is we are hearing this more and more. And also, 11 days ago, I think it was, we also heard this pretty much in different words from some credible people as well. If Sir Jim likes the Glazers so much, he can give them Ineos shares instead, says Glenny Boy. And if Radcliffe gets the club and Qatar go on to buy a club like Spurs, we're probably never going to qualify for the Champions League because of the financial model under the Radcliffe ownership, says Abia. And Sir Jim with a competent football structure versus Al Thani with ex-pros in key positions. I don't know anything anymore, says Ami. Mate, that's just spin though, you know. And ultimately, what would you? That's just a hypothetical spin. I mean, as I say, I couldn't give a shit who the CEO is. I don't care who the director of football is. I care about what a mess the football club is in, how much debt it's in, and the fact that I don't want the Glazers part of this football club anymore. That for me is what I would look at. And there's a lot of people saying you need to look at the way Nice has been run in France. He's run it into the ground. I mean, again, I don't really care what he's done at Nice. It could be a warning sign. It might be something. It might be lessons learned. But I think that you know, we can profile Sir Jim as much as we like. He's a businessman. Sir Jim Radcliffe's a businessman. He's a very successful businessman. People will say, you know, he's gone and lived abroad to avoid paying taxes. People will say, you know, he's there's Chelsea fan, all this sort of stuff. I'm not really interested in that. I think he represents somebody that's done a deal with the Glazers to get hold of the club, and that's where it starts and ends for me. I don't really care where he gets his hair cut. I don't really care where he lives. I don't really care what taxes he pays. I don't really care whether he voted Brexit or not. I don't really care if his favourite player is Harry Maguire. I don't really care if he'll buy Mbappe. I don't really care if he had a Chelsea season ticket. None of those are not... They might be reasons why people don't want him to buy us. I don't care. It begins and ends with me that he's done a deal with the Glazers to keep the Glazers at the club for a vanity project, which clearly isn't best for the club. That's the big problem for me. I can't move past that. Sometimes in life, simplifying things makes things easier to deal with. I've been very consistent. I think most of United fans have been very consistent that they want the Glazers out and they want a full sale. We've all seen the banners. We've all seen the tweets. It's Glazers out and a full sale. So Jim does not represent that. He's done a deal with the Glazers if he gets this club. That's the bottom line. He can spin it, he can wrap it up, he can spray it with perfume, he can do whatever he likes, but he's done a deal with the Glazers if he gets hold of this club. And I can't be pro that. Mark, it would be good to hear more about you and how you've got to where you are. Maybe a podcast as user one. I am filming Going for Goldbridge later. If you want to check that out, that'll be up on my channel at about 2 o'clock. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. I'm sure, look, whatever's going to happen at some point, we are going to get the definitive answer and it's going to be crazy. So make sure you subscribe, bottom right hand corner, and be ready for that. And I'll speak to you all in a little bit. Thanks everyone for watching. Of course, thank you for all your opinions. And if you didn't watch live, leave us your comments because we do read them and I'll be very interested to see what you've got to say. Speak to you all in a bit. And don't forget, we have got a live show at 8 o'clock tonight and 2 o'clock this afternoon. Let's see what happens. Speak to you in a bit.